The discovery of the lost archives. The crystalline chamber hummed with ancient energy as Dr. Kira Zenth carefully brushed cosmic dust from the massive data core. Her 6 arms moved with practiced precision, each appendage handling different archaeological tools while her compound eyes analyzed the strange symbols etched into the translucent surface. The abandoned moon base had been drifting in the void for over 70,000 years, yet somehow these archives remained perfectly preserved. Kira's breathing apparatus hissed softly as she leaned closer to examine the glowing inscriptions. The Valdorian scientist had spent her entire career studying dead civilizations, but nothing had prepared her for this discovery. The symbols seemed to shift and dance before her eyes, as if the ancient technology was trying to communicate across the millennia. Her research partner, a young crystalline named Prism, floated nearby in his environmental suit. His geometric form refracted the chamber's light into rainbow patterns across the walls. Professor Zenth, the energy readings are unlike anything in our databases. This technology predates even the Forerunner ruins on Xerion Prime. Kira nodded, her mandibles clicking with excitement. The Valdorian homeworld had been studying galactic archaeology for over 10 million years. Yet this find challenged everything they thought they knew about ancient civilizations. She activated her translation matrix, hoping the universal linguistic algorithms could make sense of the alien script. The first symbols appeared on her holographic display, and Kira's 4 hearts nearly stopped beating. The translation read, "Archives of the First Watchers, Final Testament to the Coming of the Soulborn, Soulborn." The term sent ripples of confusion through Kira's consciousness. In the common galactic tongue, Sol referred to a small yellow star in the Outer Rim territories, a backwater system that had only recently produced a spacefaring species called humans. But why would an ancient civilization, one that existed before most current species had even evolved, mention such an insignificant corner of the galaxy? She continued translating, her excitement growing with each decoded passage. The archives spoke of watchers, ancient beings who had observed the galaxy for eons, documenting the rise and fall of countless civilizations. But these final entries were different. They spoke of a prophecy, a vision of the future that had compelled them to preserve this message across vast stretches of time. "Prism, contact the Galactic Assembly immediately," Kira commanded, her voice trembling with the magnitude of her discovery. "Tell them we need an emergency session. Code Omega priority." The crystalline's form flickered with surprise. Code Omega was reserved for galaxy-threatening discoveries. "Professor, are you certain? The political ramifications of calling such a session—" "Look at this translation," Kira interrupted, projecting the holographic text for Prism to see. "The archives mention humans specifically. They call them the Awakeners, the ones who will either save the galaxy or doom it to eternal silence." 3 standard days later, the Great Assembly Hall on the neutral station of Harmony's Edge buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from over 200 species had gathered in response to Kira's urgent summons. The massive amphitheater could hold millions of beings, yet today it felt cramped with tension and curiosity. High Counselor Theiss of the Saurian Dominion presided over the session from his elevated platform. His scaled features betrayed no emotion, but his tail twitched with barely contained agitation. The Saurians had led the Galactic Assembly for over 50,000 years, and Theiss was not pleased about being summoned by a single archaeologist, no matter how renowned. "Dr. Zenth," Theiss's voice boomed across the chamber, enhanced by universal translators. "You have gathered the galaxy's leadership under Code Omega protocols. This had better be worth the disruption to galactic commerce and diplomacy." Kira stood at the central podium, her 6 arms gesturing toward the massive holographic display that dominated the chamber's center. The ancient archives floated in 3-dimensional glory, their crystalline structure rotating slowly as alien symbols pulsed with inner light. "Honored representatives," she began, her voice carried to every corner of the vast hall. "What I am about to share with you will challenge everything we believe about our galaxy's past and future. These archives were left by a civilization we have designated the First Watchers, beings who observed galactic events for over 100 million years. A murmur rippled through the assembled delegates. Species that considered themselves ancient Races that had mastered interstellar travel when Earth's continents were still forming found themselves dwarfed by the timescales Kira described. Admiral Vex Corin of the Hive Collective rose from his section, his insectoid form clicking with agitation. Dr. Zenth, with respect, ancient civilizations are fascinating to scholars, but hardly warrant disrupting galactic governance. What does this have to do with current affairs? Kira activated the translation matrix, and the chamber fell silent, as ancient words appeared in dozens of languages across the holographic display. The final testament speaks of the soul-born, beings from a small world orbiting a yellow star. It describes them as the awakeners, the final hope against what the archives call the Great Silence. The mention of Sul caused immediate chaos. Representatives from every major power block began shouting questions and demands for clarification. Sol was known to every government in the galaxy now, not because of its strategic importance, but because of the remarkable species that had emerged from its third planet. Humans had burst onto the galactic stage less than a century ago, and their rapid expansion had surprised everyone. Unlike most species that spent millions of years developing slowly, humans had gone from primitive agriculture to faster-than-light travel in mere millennia. They were chaotic, unpredictable, and utterly fascinating to xenobiologists across the galaxy. Through the commotion, a clear voice spoke from the junior delegates section. "I believe I can provide some perspective on this matter." All eyes turned to see Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Federation, standing calmly, despite the attention of hundreds of alien species focused upon her. The human wore a simple blue uniform adorned with the insignia of her young nation, looking almost absurdly small among the towering forms of elder races. High Counselor Thys gestured for silence, his reptilian eyes fixed on the human representative. "Captain Chen, you are recognized. What insight can humanity offer regarding these ancient prophecies?" Sarah stepped forward, her movements confident despite the weight of galactic history pressing down upon her. Unlike many species that had evolved past emotional expression, humans wore their feelings openly. Her face showed a mixture of wonder, concern, and determination that many aliens found both disturbing and compelling. "Honored counselors," Sarah began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "Humanity has always known we were different. Our evolutionary path was unusual, marked by rapid cognitive development that our own scientists couldn't fully explain. We've always wondered why we seemed to adapt so quickly to new challenges, why we thrived in chaos while other species sought order." She gestured toward the floating archives, their ancient light casting strange shadows across her features. "Perhaps these first watchers observed our species during our early development. Perhaps they saw something in humanity that we're only now beginning to understand ourselves." Dr. Kira activated another section of the translation matrix, revealing new text that made the entire chamber gasp in collective shock. The holographic words pulsed with ominous meaning. The soul-born carry within them the ancient fire of creation and destruction. They are chaos incarnate, yet from their chaos comes innovation. They alone possess the emotional spectrum necessary to face the Great Silence, for logic alone cannot comprehend the void that devours meaning itself. Admiral Karan's compound eyes focused intently on Sarah. "Captain Chen, this prophecy suggests your species has some special role to play in galactic affairs. The Hive Collective demands to know, what is this Great Silence the archives warn about?" Sarah looked up at the massive alien military commander, her human eyes meeting his multifaceted gaze without flinching. "Admiral, I wish I could answer that question, but perhaps that's precisely the point. The archives don't seem to be giving us answers, they're giving us a warning. And warnings are only useful if we act on them before it's too late." Counselor Thys leaned forward on his platform, his ancient mind processing implications that spanned millions of years of galactic history. "Dr. Zenth, continue the translation. If these first watchers truly observed our galaxy for 100 million years, they must have left more specific information about this threat they foresaw." Kira's 6 arms danced across her control interfaces, diving deeper into the crystalline archives. The translation matrix struggled with increasingly complex concepts, symbols that seemed to represent ideas beyond conventional language. Finally, new text materialized and the chamber fell into stunned silence. When the stars begin to forget their names, when civilizations turn inward and cease to dream, when the very fabric of space grows cold with the absence of wonder, then shall the great silence begin its final harvest. Only the awakeners, those who refuse to accept limitations, who create meaning from chaos and find hope in darkness, can kindle the fire that will burn back the void. The implications hit the assembled delegates like a physical force. Every major civilization in the galaxy had been trending toward stagnation for millennia. Art had become formulaic, exploration had slowed, and most species spent their time managing resources rather than pushing boundaries. The vibrant chaos of early civilization had given way to efficient, orderly, and ultimately sterile societies. Except for humanity. Captain Sarah Chen looked around the chamber at faces representing millions of years of galactic civilization, and she saw something that chilled her to the bone. She saw fear. These ancient, powerful species were terrified of a threat they didn't understand, and they were looking to humanity for salvation. The weight of an entire galaxy's expectations settled on her shoulders as the first Watcher's final message appeared in the holographic display, pulsing with urgent light across the vast chamber of the Galactic Assembly, forever changing humanity's place among the stars. The awakening truth. The emergency session had been called to recess, but nobody left the Great Assembly Hall. Representatives from across the galaxy clustered in heated discussions, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, hisses, harmonic frequencies, and translated voices. The revelation that humanity might hold the key to preventing galactic extinction had shattered centuries of established diplomatic protocols. Dr. Kira Zenth worked frantically at her translation station, her 6 arms manipulating holographic interfaces while her compound eyes processed streams of ancient data. The crystalline archives seemed to respond to the urgency of the moment, revealing deeper layers of information that had remained hidden for 70,000 years. Captain. Sarah Chen stood beside the Valdorian scientist, watching alien symbols transform into words that would reshape galactic civilization. The human's presence seemed to calm Kira somehow, as if Sarah's emotional resonance helped stabilize the ancient technology. Professor, Sarah said quietly, the archives are responding to emotions, aren't they? That's why they're revealing more information now that everyone is frightened and excited. Kira's mandibles clicked in appreciation. Remarkable insight, Captain. The first Watcher's technology appears to be keyed to emotional resonance patterns. Most galactic species have evolved past strong emotional responses. But humans... She paused, studying Sarah with new understanding. Humans generate incredibly complex emotional fields. High Counselor Thys approached their station, his reptilian form towering over both women. Despite his advanced age and political experience, uncertainty flickered in his ancient eyes. Dr. Zenth, what else have you discovered? The Assembly grows restless and several member species are demanding immediate military preparations against this unknown threat. Before Kira could respond, the archives pulsed with brilliant light. New symbols cascaded across the holographic display, more complex and urgent than anything they had seen before. The translation matrix struggled, producing fragmented phrases that sent chills through everyone present. The harvest begins at the rim, worlds fall silent one by one. Consciousness itself becomes food for the void. Only chaos can disrupt. The pattern. Admiral Corrin materialized beside them, his insectoid form practically vibrating with agitation. Those phrases match reports we've been receiving from our outer colonies. 17 systems have gone completely silent in the past. Standard month. No distress calls, no final transmissions, just silence. Sarah felt her blood run cold. Admiral, when you say silent, do you mean destroyed? Conquered? That's what we assumed initially, Corrin replied, his compound eyes reflecting the archives. Light. But our scout ships found the planets intact, the infrastructure undamaged. The populations were still there, still alive, but they had simply stopped. No art, no communication, no dreams. They continued basic survival functions, but showed no signs of consciousness beyond primitive biological needs. The archives pulsed again, revealing more text that made Kira's breathing apparatus hiss with shock. Captain Chen, look at this passage. It describes the Great Silence as a force that feeds on consciousness itself, draining the will to create, explore, and dream. But here, it says that chaotic emotional patterns create interference that the silence cannot consume. Sarah studied the ancient words, her human mind processing concepts that even advanced galactic civilizations struggled to comprehend. It's not talking about military resistance, is it? This isn't something we can fight with weapons or technology. No, Kira whispered, her voice filled with awe and terror. The Great Silence feeds on order, predictability, and stagnation. It cannot process true chaos, genuine creativity, or unpredictable emotional responses. That's why the first watchers, called humans, the Awakeners. Your species naturally generates the one thing that can disrupt this cosmic predator. The implications crashed over the assembled representatives like a wave. Every major galactic civilization had spent millions of years evolving toward efficiency, logic, and emotional control. They had eliminated chaos from their societies, viewing it as primitive and counterproductive. Only humanity remained chaotically creative, emotionally unpredictable, and utterly fascinating in their refusal to be contained by logical systems. Counselor Thiss's tail twitched with agitation as he processed this information. Are you suggesting that our entire evolutionary path, our advancement toward logical perfection, has made us vulnerable to this threat? Sarah looked up at the ancient reptilian leader, her human eyes bright with determination. With respect, Counselor, maybe evolution isn't about reaching a perfect end state. Maybe it's about maintaining the ability to adapt to change, to surprise yourself with what you're capable of when everything seems impossible. The archive suddenly erupted with light, responding to Sarah's words with an intensity that forced everyone to shield their eyes. When the brilliance faded, new text appeared that would forever change galactic civilization. The Soulborn speak truth that echoes across eternity. Perfection is death, chaos is life, and in the space between order and madness lies the fire that keeps the darkness at bay. The Great Silence comes for those who have forgotten how to dream, but the Awakeners dream even in their nightmares. Before anyone could respond to this revelation, alarms began blaring throughout Harmony's Edge station. Emergency beacons flashed, red across the assembly hall as Admiral Corrin received urgent communications through his neural link to the Hive Collective. The Outer Rim colonies in the Andorian sector have just gone silent, he announced, his voice cutting through the chaos. That's 47 systems lost in the past hour. The silence is accelerating its advance toward the core worlds. Panic rippled through the assembled delegates. Species that had existed for millions of years faced the possibility of extinction, not through war or natural disaster, but through the simple loss of will to continue existing. The Great Silence was not destroying civilizations. It was draining them of the very essence that made life worth living. Sarah felt the weight of an entire galaxy's hopes settling on her shoulders. But instead of crushing her, it seemed to ignite something deep within her human spirit. She stepped forward, her voice clear and strong despite the magnitude of the crisis. Representatives of the Galactic Assembly, she began, and something in her tone commanded attention from even the most ancient and powerful beings present. Humanity offers itself in service to the galaxy, not as conquerors or saviors, but as partners in the most important battle we may ever fight. High Counselor Thiss leaned forward, his reptilian features intense with interest. What do you propose, Captain Chen? Sarah's human smile held both determination and compassion, emotions that many species had forgotten how to express. We teach you to be chaotic again. We help you remember what it feels like to dream impossible dreams, to create art that serves no logical purpose, to love someone so much that it defies all rational thought. The suggestion sent shockwaves through the assembly. Species that had spent eons perfecting logical systems were being asked to embrace the very chaos they had eliminated from their cultures. Dr. Kira Zenth suddenly gasped, her 6 arms trembling as she read the final passages of the archives. "Captain, look at this." The first watchers left specific instructions. They described something called the Awakening Protocol, a method for using human emotional resonance to create galaxy-wide interference patterns that can disrupt the great silence. The ancient text revealed a plan of staggering scope and audacity. Humans would need to be dispersed throughout galactic civilization, not as conquerors, but as teachers and inspirers. They would help other species rediscover their capacity for wonder, creativity, and unpredictable emotional responses. The protocol required unprecedented cooperation between all galactic species, with humanity serving as the catalyst for a fundamental transformation of civilized society. Admiral Corrin's form clicked with nervous energy. This protocol would require us to fundamentally restructure our entire civilization. The social, political, and economic implications are staggering. Sarah nodded, understanding the magnitude of what they were proposing. "Admiral, the alternative is the complete extinction of consciousness in our galaxy. The Great Silence isn't offering us a choice between change and stability. It's offering us a choice between growth and death." As if responding to her words, the archives displayed their final message, a passage that would be remembered as long as consciousness existed in the galaxy. "To those who receive this warning, the universe is vast and filled with wonders beyond imagination, but it is also filled with forces that seek to reduce all things to silence and stillness. The Soulborn carry within them the eternal flame of chaos and creation. Trust in their gift, learn from their example, and remember that sometimes the greatest act of wisdom is to embrace the beautiful madness of being truly alive." The crystalline archives flickered once more, and then went dark forever. Their message, finally delivered after waiting 70,000 years for the right moment in galactic history. In the stunned silence that followed, Captain Sarah Chen looked around at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. She saw fear in their alien features, but she also saw something else beginning to emerge. Hope. "So," she said with a very human grin that somehow translated across species barriers, "who's ready to learn how to dream again?" The first response came from an unexpected source. Counselor Thais, ancient leader of the most logical and orderly civilization in the galaxy, stood up from his platform and did something no Saurian had done in recorded history. He laughed. The sound was rusty and uncertain, as if vocal cords evolved for logical discourse were remembering a forgotten function. But it was genuine, and it carried with it the first spark of chaos that would eventually kindle into the fire, that would burn back the Great Silence. Across the galaxy, on worlds where populations had fallen into emotionless silence, a few individuals suddenly looked up at the stars and wondered what lay beyond their atmosphere. It was a small beginning, but it was enough. The awakening had begun.